His bank account never lied to him. Not once. Every deposit, every purchase, every dollar he refused to let go of. It was all telling the truth long before he was ready to hear it. Most people think Matthew 6:21 is about giving more money to church. It isn't. It's about something far more dangerous. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. That means the heart doesn't announce where it's going. It just follows the money, quietly, month after month, without ever asking permission. And here's the part nobody wants to admit. You can love God on Sunday and still trust your savings account more than Him on Monday. That's not hypocrisy. That's what happens when nobody ever teaches a Christian how to read their own bank statement like Scripture. So before this goes any further, one thing has to be said clearly. This isn't about guilt. This is about truth, the kind that sets a heart free instead of shaming it into silence. And it starts with a question most people spend a lifetime avoiding. What is your money revealing about your heart right now, today? If this question hits somewhere real, hit like before you go any further. And in the comments, leave your name and tell me honestly where your treasure has been living lately. Money has a strange way of exposing what a person tries to keep hidden, even from themselves. In Matthew 6:21, Jesus said something simple enough for a child to repeat, but sharp enough to unsettle a grown man. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. He was not talking about coins. He was talking about direction, about where the heart quietly runs when nobody is watching. And a bank account, of all places, can say more about a person's faith than 100 Sunday mornings ever could. Take a bank statement, not the balance, but the pattern. It will not lie the way a smile can. It shows what gets protected first, what gets given last, and what gets hoarded out of quiet fear. A person who never has money to help a struggling neighbor but always finds money for one more thing they don't need is not broke. They are revealed. So here is something worth trying this week. Pull up last month's spending, just 3 categories: giving, saving, and just because, and let the numbers preach for a minute. Here is the part most people skip past too quickly. Money does not create a person's heart. It only shows what was already living inside it. Luke 12:15 warns that life does not consist in the abundance of possessions, a warning that would sound unnecessary if possessions did not keep promising things they cannot deliver. Safety, importance, control. Christian money, understood rightly, was never meant to be a scoreboard for faith. It was meant to be a mirror, and Proverbs 4:23 says to guard that mirror above everything else, because heart and wealth are never as separate as people like to believe. None of this means saving is sinful or planning ahead is somehow unspiritual. That conversation is coming. But before anyone can talk about where treasure should go, they have to be honest about where their treasure already is. A person can manage every dollar with perfect discipline and still be quietly serving it. The heart does not always announce who it follows. Sometimes it just follows, and that raises a harder question than any budget ever could. What happens when the treasure a person has spent a lifetime building on earth starts competing with the treasure Jesus keeps trying to point them toward in heaven? Jesus never once said that having a home, a retirement fund, or a little something saved for hard times was a sin. He was raised by a carpenter, not a monk who despised every coin that passed through his hands. What he warned against in Matthew 6:19-20 was something far more subtle than owning things. It was letting things own the place in the heart that only He was ever meant to hold. There is a real difference between having a treasure and being had by one, and most people cross that line without ever noticing the moment it happened. For someone who spent 40, 50 years working, saving, and planning for someday, this hits close to home. Nobody is asking anyone to give away the house or empty the savings account out of guilt. The question is quieter than that. Does the retirement fund feel like a tool in God's hands? Or does it feel like the last line of defense against a world that can't be trusted? Colossians 3:2 puts it plainly, "Set your mind on things above, not on things of the earth." And that is not a call to stop planning. It's a call to stop hoping. Here is where 1 Timothy 6:17 becomes less of a verse and more of a mirror. It tells the wealthy not to be arrogant and not to put their hope in wealth, which is so uncertain, but in God, who richly provides. Uncertain is the key word. A house can burn, a market can crash, a body can fail long before a bank account runs dry. Christian money was never meant to carry the weight of certainty, because it was never built to hold it. Hidden treasure isn't hidden because it's buried in a vault. Sometimes it's hidden because a person has been calling it security for so long, they forgot to call it what it really is. So the tension is not planning versus faith. A wise steward does both. The real tension is subtler, and it lives in a single question worth sitting with tonight. Is the future being trusted to a portfolio, or to the Father who's been faithful long before that portfolio ever existed? Because there's a version of stewardship that manages money without ever fearing it. And that version has a name most people haven't learned to say out loud yet. Biblical stewardship starts with an uncomfortable truth. None of it was ever really yours. Not the salary, not the pension, not the house with the mortgage finally paid off. Not even the years of health that made working possible in the first place. 1 Corinthians 4:2 says it plainly. What's required of a steward is faithfulness, not ownership. That single shift in thinking changes everything, because a steward doesn't white-knuckle what's been handed to him. He manages it wisely for someone else's glory. Here's where a lot of well-meaning Christians get stuck. They hear steward and think cautious to the point of paralysis. They stop giving because giving feels risky. They stop helping because help costs something. They stop enjoying what they've been given because enjoying it feels almost sinful. But that's not stewardship. That's fear wearing a spiritual costume. Proverbs 3:9-10 talks about honoring God with the first fruits. And first fruits were never given by someone terrified of running out. Try this the next time a bill comes due or an offering plate passes by. Ask, am I managing this with wisdom, or am I gripping this out of fear? They can look identical from the outside. Same bank account, same spreadsheet, same monthly budget, but one flows from trust and the other from control. Psalm 24:1 settles the account before it's even opened. The earth is the Lord's and everything in it. That includes the house, the car, the savings, and yes, even the grandkids' inheritance everyone worries so much about. A faithful steward gives generously without being reckless, saves wisely without worshiping the number, and holds it all with an open hand instead of a closed fist. That sounds simple on paper. It gets a lot harder to live out when fear starts whispering that God's provision has an expiration date. And that whisper deserves its own conversation, because for a lot of people, that fear didn't start with money at all. There's a fear that visits people quietly in the night, long after the lights are off. The fear of not having enough. Not enough for the medication that keeps getting more expensive. Not enough if the body breaks down and the children have to step in. Not enough to make it through without becoming a burden to someone else. That fear doesn't make a person weak in faith. It makes them human, living in a world that has given them plenty of reasons to be afraid. Jesus never mocked that fear. In Matthew 6:25-34, he didn't say stop worrying like it was some easy switch to flip. He pointed to the birds, fed without a single anxious thought, and to the flowers, dressed better than any king ever managed to dress himself. And then he asked gently whether the one who cares for them could really be trusted to forget someone made in his own image. That's not a rebuke. That's an invitation, offered to a heart that's tired of carrying tomorrow's weight today. Here's something worth writing on an index card and keeping somewhere visible. On the fridge, in a Bible, tucked into a wallet. Philippians 4:6-7, the part about presenting requests to God with thanksgiving and receiving a peace that doesn't even make logical sense given the circumstances. That peace isn't the absence of a real problem. It's the presence of a Father who hasn't looked away from it. And for anyone who feels like the years are catching up faster than the strength to face them, Isaiah 46:4 says something worth hearing twice. Even to old age, He is the one who carries. Planning for the future is wisdom. Nobody's arguing against a savings account or a will, but there's a line between preparing wisely and living each day held hostage by a fear of what next year might bring, and most people cross it without realizing when it happened. So maybe the real question isn't, will there be enough? Maybe it's whether the God who's provided for every single day up to this one has somehow, quietly, stopped being trustworthy, and what changes the moment someone decides He hasn't. There's a poor widow in Mark 12:41-44 who never said a word, and yet her story outlived every wealthy person who walked past her that day. She gave 2 small coins, worth almost nothing, while others gave large sums out of their surplus. Jesus didn't measure the amount. He measured what was left over after she gave, which was nothing, and He called it more than all the rest combined. That single moment says more about generosity than 100 sermons ever could. Generosity was never really about the size of the gift. It's about what the gift costs the giver, and what it reveals about who's really sitting on the throne of the heart. A person can have very little and give freely, unafraid, because their security was never tied to the number in the account. Another can have plenty and give nothing, gripping tighter with every dollar earned, because somewhere along the way, the money quietly became the thing being trusted instead of God. Same actions, wildly different hearts underneath them. 2 Corinthians 9:7 says, God loves a cheerful giver, not a guilty one, not a resentful one, not someone calculating the bare minimum to feel okay about it. Cheerful giving doesn't come from a spreadsheet. It comes from a heart that's already settled the question of who owns everything in the first place. A small, practical place to start. Pick one person this month, a neighbor, a grandchild, someone at church quietly struggling, and give something before being asked. Not because it's owed, because it's an act of worship dressed up as an ordinary kindness. Acts 20:35 records something Jesus said that isn't even written in the Gospels themselves. It is more blessed to give than to receive. That's not a nice sentiment for a greeting card. It's a description of how the heart was actually built to work. Whoever can't seem to release anything might not be holding on to money at all. They might be held by it. And that raises a question that reaches further than any bank account ever could. The question of what gets left behind long after the giving is over. Most people spend a lifetime thinking about what they'll leave behind. A house, a little land, some savings tucked away for the grandkids. There's nothing wrong with that. Deuteronomy 6:6-7 talks about teaching God's commands diligently to children, talking about them at home and on the road, when lying down and when rising up, which means the real inheritance was never meant to be locked in a filing cabinet. It was meant to be lived out loud in front of the people watching closest. Here's a question worth sitting with for longer than feels comfortable. What will the grandchildren actually remember? Will they remember a full bank account? Or will they remember someone who prayed before every meal, who forgave the family member that was hard to forgive, who tithed even in the lean years, who trusted God out loud when trusting Him wasn't easy? Proverbs 13:22 says, "A good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children." But the wisest inheritance was never only measured in dollars. It's measured in what got passed down about how to face life itself. 3 John 1:4 says, "There's no greater joy than hearing that one's children are walking in the truth." Not walking in comfort, not walking in wealth, but walking in truth. That's a different kind of legacy than the one most people plan for with a lawyer and a will. It's built in ordinary moments. A story told at the dinner table. A hard season handled with grace instead of panic. A quiet example of someone who kept trusting God even when the money got tight. So maybe the estate plan isn't finished with just a house and a savings account. Maybe it needs one more line. one that's harder to write down because it can't be notarized. What faith, exactly, is being left behind? And has it been lived clearly enough for someone else to actually inherit it? Every question in this journey has really been circling back to one place. Not how much money is there, but something much closer to the bone. What does the money reveal about the faith underneath it? A bank statement was never just a record of spending. It's been a mirror the whole time, quietly showing what gets trusted, what gets feared, and who actually sits on the throne of the heart when nobody else is watching. Matthew 6:24 draws a hard line that doesn't leave much room for negotiation. No one can serve two masters, not because money is evil, but because it makes a terrible God and a wonderful tool. And the difference between those two roles is decided one ordinary choice at a time. The good news tucked inside that hard line is this: Christ doesn't want to compete with the bank account. He wants to sit above it, so the money can finally go back to doing the job it was actually built for. That shift doesn't happen through one dramatic decision. It happens through small, deliberate steps. Reviewing spending with prayer instead of guilt. Setting aside generosity on purpose before the month eats it away. Avoiding debt that isn't necessary. Having the honest conversation with family about what's being left behind. Not just property, but faith. Bringing every fear about tomorrow honestly to God, instead of quietly carrying it alone. Matthew 6:33 promises that when His kingdom is sought first, everything else finds its proper place. Not because money stops mattering, but because it finally stops ruling. Hebrews 13:5 closes the door on the fear that started this whole journey. I will never leave you, nor forsake you. That's not a promise about a balance sheet. It's a promise about a person, one who was never impressed by savings and was never threatened by lack. When Christ returns to the throne of the heart, right where He belongs, the money simply returns to its proper place, a tool held with open hands, not a master gripped with white knuckles. And that changes everything about how the story ends. Everything that's been said here was never really about money. It was about the heart. It always is. Matthew 6:21 didn't come to condemn a bank account. It came to expose what the bank account had been quietly revealing all along. So now the question isn't, how much do you have? The question is, what you're going to do with what's just been uncovered. Are you going to keep managing money the same way? Or are you finally going to let Christ sit back on the throne of your heart? Are you going to keep planning for tomorrow while quietly forgetting the Father who's carried you through every yesterday? Are you going to keep giving out of guilt or start giving out of freedom? Here's something to try before the day ends. Open your bank statement. Not with shame, with prayer. Ask God to show you exactly what your treasure has been revealing. Then ask Him for the courage to move it back to where it belongs. Because Christian money was never meant to be a source of anxiety. It was meant to be a tool in the hands of someone who trusts the God who owns it all. If this opened something in you, don't let it end here. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because there's a lot more truth like this still waiting to be uncovered, and you don't want to miss what's coming next.